Now the 1961 sighting of Lee Harvey Oswald at Bolton Ford from this November 25th, 1963 FBI document. Oscar W. DeSlot, Assistant Manager Truck Sales, Bolton Ford, advised that he recalled two men coming to Bolton Ford on January 20th, 1961. He remembered the date and the following information as he had in his possession a bid for purchase form made out to Friends of Democratic Cuba, 402 St. Charles Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana. He said a Mr. Joseph Moore, whose description he cannot remember, nor can he furnish any other identifying data regarding him, advised him that he and his friend were representing the above organization and wished to purchase 10 Ford Econoline trucks. DeSlot said Moore listed the equipment he desired on the trucks, but he did not state whether they were for use here in the United States or to be sent to Cuba. DeSlot quoted him the price and advised that he would make a $75 profit on each truck. Moore said that he thought they should get the trucks for no profit for his organization. Moore then told them that he should change the name on the bid from Moore to Oswald, no first name given. The individual with Moore then said that was his name, and it should go on the form as he was the man with the money and would pay for the trucks if they were purchased. DeSlot was exhibited a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald, and he said he cannot recall ever having seen him before, nor could he say this was the individual who had come in with Moore. DeSlot said he could neither describe nor identify either of the men who came in, as it was almost 3 years ago that they were there and only spent a short time with him. He said he remembered this incident, not by the name Oswald, but because the name of the organization represented. DeSlot said that he himself filled out the above-mentioned bid form completely, and neither individual either handled it or signed it. He said that he made the original of this form available to them and retained a carbon copy of this form for his use, which he said he made available to the interviewing agents. And this is the form here. So the story here, told by DeSlot as related through the FBI report, is that Oswald and somebody else came in to buy some trucks for Cuba, that the other guy did most of the talking when discussing the requirements of the vehicles, and that Oswald was the guy who was going to provide the money when the time came to buy them. And the strongest evidence here presented for this being Oswald is that his name, at least the name Oswald, appears written on this form, circled in red here. And if that name had not been on there, then probably this connection never would have been made, I think. And circled in blue is the organization they said they represented, Friends of a Democratic Cuba. Now, in the FBI report, it says the address of Friends of Democratic Cuba is 402 St. Charles Avenue. But here it looks to me as if it says St. Clair Avenue. You can't be certain of what it says because it's not very clearly written. But Charles is a longer word than Clair, and that looks like it's a shorter word. Anyway, if it's St. Clair, this is what St. Clair looks like today, and it doesn't seem likely that it would have looked like where you'd expect to find such an organization probably in 1961 either. But the St. Charles address is a downtown location. So I don't know what it really says there, but I suspect that the FBI, as it often does, might be changing the names of things in order to obscure the truth. But who knows for sure? Maybe it does say Charles. It is well known that the Friends of Democratic Cuba was an anti-Castro organization, and the guy Bannister was involved with it, and I can't see any address connected to this organization having to do with Guy Bannister or the other people that would correspond to either St. Charles or St. Clair. So I think probably our two truck buyers gave a false address. And I think that probably they also gave a false name for the organization they were representing. That is, I think it probably really was Oswald, and he's really there with this Cuban guy who knows what they want, and Oswald is the one that will provide the money, that he will be the conduit for the money, and that they're giving the name of this anti-Castro organization, I think because they wouldn't expect support or cooperation or a deal if they were buying trucks for Castro, so that they're probably misrepresenting who they're buying them for, is my idea on that. And I think it is consistent with my idea that this is not really an anti-Castro truck buy that's being explored, is the fact that Carlos Bringuier, who is definitely anti-Castro, and I think it's pretty well established that he was connected with anti-Castro activities even in the U.S. government, or in some way, that they were handled by the CIA, his group. The fact that he tips off the FBI about the Bolton Ford incident, I think, indicates that it's probably not a genuine Guy Bannister-connected activity, the buying of these trucks. It's not that Carlos Bringuier would know everything that Guy Bannister is up to, but it seems to me that somebody would have stopped him from doing this, from tipping off the FBI about a genuine truck deal by the Guy Bannister organization. And this tip, of course, comes after the FBI had already talked to the Bolton Ford people. But nonetheless, Carlos Bringuier is pointing it out to them on December 9th, 1963. And now I'm going to read some parts of the Jim Garrison interview with Fred A. Sewell, the other guy that was dealing with Oswald and his friend Moore at the Bolton Ford dealership. This is not the guy the FBI was referring to in their report, but he was one of the two who dealt with Oswald and his friend. By whom are you employed in 1961, the summer of 1961? Bolton Ford Truck Center. Now, I don't know why they're specifying the summer, since this happened in January. And he was working with Deslott, it says here. Do you recall Mr. Deslott ever showing you or asking you about the sale of 10 trucks to some Freedom Cuba organization? Yes, he come in my office. Well, our desks were together, but I was in another room with glass about 10 feet away, and he come in and said, look, this may be for a good cause as a kind of contributing to Cuba. I get the feeling these guys have no clue about the politics going on with Cuba at the time, if that's possible. They've had uprisings and all down there, and they want 10 vans like these that Ford is building now. And if this is really what was said, then it sounds like the guys that are buying the trucks are buying them for Castro, and as if they think that's a good sales pitch. I think there might be some confusion here. But anyway, I said, well, if it's a good cause, let's put $50 over cost on each one of them. And Oscar says, that's okay, I'll fix it up. And, of course, the FBI wrote down that it was a $75 over cost deal. Before you go any further, did you get a look at the proposal he had? Did you read it? Oh, yes, I had to okay it for him. Did you notice any names on it? Yes, he had one name one time, and if I remember, it was a Cuban name, as far as I can remember that. And then this thin man with his hair a little long, who looked like he might need a meal, a little skinny, said, you better put my name down there because I'm the man with the money. He was going to handle the money. Did this man say that in your presence? Yes. What did this man look like? Well, he looked like he was about probably 5'6" or 5'7", probably weighed at that time about 140 to 145 pounds, and he wasn't dressed the best. He wasn't sloppy, he was neat, clean, but his hair was long. So this is supposedly Oswald. He has him a little short here, but otherwise it could be Oswald. Now let me ask you this, Mr. Sewell. Was he accompanied by anybody else at this time? Yes, the man with a Cuban accent and looked Yes, with the man with the Cuban accent, looked like a Cuban. And so this is the guy who apparently is named Joseph Moore, but he, according to this gentleman, he looked Cuban and he talked like a Cuban. That is, he talked with an accent. Can you describe this man? Heavy set, wavy hair, kind of olive complexion, very technical and well educated, more educated than the other man. What do you mean by technical? Well, he asked me interesting facts about these vans that I didn't even know myself. It shows that he was well read and knew something about mechanics, and that he had come over there well versed to find out what he was buying or bidding on. Do you recall the name that he gave? No, I can't remember now. Do you feel that that name was written down on the bid? It was written down on the bid, I know. And here we look at the bid, and the name Moore is on here. So Moore apparently is the Cuban. Now, what was the name of the other man, the thin man? Did you ever see his name written on the bid? I think that Oscar DeSlot wrote that name on there, Lee Oswald. But he didn't use the Harvey, just Lee Oswald, if I remember right. And if we look on the bid, it's just Oswald, it's not Lee Oswald. Did you ever hear this man identify himself as Lee Oswald? Right, that's what he said. Did the other man identify himself too? No, Oscar had his name on the bid. He didn't mention his name. He didn't say much after that. Now talking about the FBI visit, he is asked, had they shown you some pictures, the FBI agents? And he says no. They didn't show you any pictures? No, they didn't show us pictures. They didn't do anything but take that paper, and they offered us a receipt. Did you take a receipt? No. You don't have a copy of that paper anywhere around? No. That was the only copy? The only copy. We had a copy, you see, but we kept the copy and gave them the original. This was a copy that the FBI got. The original went to the two men who asked for the bid. They didn't show you any pictures? No. The FBI? They never did call back. They never did come down there again. In fact, they told us that Oswald wasn't even in the country at that time. He couldn't be. So, of course, the FBI report says they did show a photograph of Oswald, and that it was not recognized by the Bolton Ford dealers. So, this shows that the FBI, perhaps, this is 6 years after now that the Garrison investigation is interviewing here, and it's the other guy, it's not DeSlot. But the impression you get here is that the FBI might be lying. They might have said that they showed a picture of Oswald, but didn't. They probably didn't want Oswald identified, because they probably knew that it really was Oswald who had come in to buy trucks for Castro. So I see this evidence as consistent with my interpretation that the imposter Oswald went to the Soviet Union, and that Lee Harvey Oswald went to Cuba and went to work for Castro, and here, before the Bay of Pigs invasion, he's on a mission to get some trucks for Castro, I think, and that the guy with him is probably a Cuban representative of Castro. And people have said that Oswald is such a character that nobody would want him as an agent. But agents can do all sorts of things. If you're in Cuba and you're the Castro intelligence organization, and you've got this American, this citizen of the United States who wants to help you, he can go buy trucks for you. He doesn't have to have any special skills to buy trucks. All he has to do is have a name and identity and be able to carry money and hand it over to somebody. So the idea that Oswald wasn't good enough to be anybody's agent, I think, is ridiculous. Lots of things can be done by agents that aren't very high skilled. The attribute he brings, the advantage he brings, the feature he brings is that he's a willing helper, and he's a U.S. citizen, and he knows his way around New Orleans. So I see this as consistent with the idea of there being two Oswalds, where the imposter, Harvey, went to the Soviet Union, and Lee Harvey Oswald defected to Cuba, just as it says he admitted to doing in the Don Stringfellow quote in the Army Intelligence Report.